Well, let's in fact first talk about the current situation in Afghanistan. The Taliban, as we know, has completely taken control of the country, with its capital, Kabul, becoming the center of panic and chaos. Thousands of Afghans are trying to flee at the moment. The situation is chaotic at the Kabul International Airport. People are trying to forcibly enter aircrafts that are there to depart from the Kabul airport. Amid this frenzy, 5 people have been killed in the Kabul airport. In fact, the US troops who are in charge of the airport now says that they had fired in the air to scatter the crowd. There's massive fear among the Afghans over the hardline brand of Islamic rule of the Taliban and uncertainty over their future. With President Ashraf Ghani fleeing the country, Afghans feel abandoned and angry, asking the international community why they are not coming to their rescue. The United Nations Security Council will meet today to discuss this evolving situation in Afghanistan. So the global response is coming in thick and fast from various countries responding to this takeover in their own way. Colonel Lawrence Sellin, live from Montana, joining me right now. He's a former member of the US Army. He's also an expert on Afghanistan and Iraq. Colonel Sellin, very good afternoon. Sorry couldn't connect to you earlier. Good to have you here on the show. I want to know at this point of time that there is a lot of analysis going on how things came to this juncture, that you have the Taliban now taking complete control of Afghanistan. Though many believe this was expected, but the speed and the scale has left the world astounded. Looking at the reactions now coming from various countries, it seems that not everybody is willing to give legitimacy to the Taliban rule.
Well, I don't think any country should give legitimacy to the Taliban. After all, this is not an insurgency. This is a proxy war that's being waged by Pakistan against Afghanistan. The Taliban are merely proxies of Pakistan, and they've essentially invaded Afghanistan and have now taken over the government there. So I don't think it's illegitimate in my mind that I don't think anyone should recognize the Taliban government.
Yes, then what happens next? That is the issue, because it seems that the US has withdrawn at a convenient time. It, of course, was a decision that was announced earlier. Now you have the Republicans and the Democrats blaming each other, not willing to take responsibility for this mess. Because what has happened literally is the Taliban moving with relative ease. There was little or no resistance. After having invested over the years in this mission, for the US to withdraw in this manner has also left the world astounded, Colonel Sellin.
Well, I think after the initial victory by the United States and NATO over the Taliban in 2001, the United States and its allies made two strategic mistakes. First of all, they assumed that this was an insurgency, so they used counterinsurgency techniques, whereas it was proxy war coming from Pakistan. The second mistake they made was try to impose a top-down Western type of democracy on Afghanistan, which is mainly a bottom-up tribal and religious culture. The other issue is with the Afghan security forces. Now, there were on paper over 300,000 in the Afghan security forces, but it was just on paper. They couldn't stand against a Taliban force of 90,000. They were 3 times bigger, yet they dissolved. And this has a lot to do with the fact that the Afghan soldiers just saw it as a job, an income for them. They didn't see the military as defending the country. There was also very poor leadership within the Afghan military, and the logistics were even worse. So I think it's not a surprise in the end that this dissolved the way it did.
And the American intelligence and weaponry, that you feel that the moment that was withdrawn, it was literally like the Afghan soldiers were incapacitated. They were no match, like you said, to the Taliban forces.
Well, that's exactly right. It was essentially a ghost army, an army on paper. So they were always relying on the U.S. and Western forces to support them in the fight against the Taliban. As soon as that support was withdrawn, they dissolved. That should be clear to everyone.
Yes, which means the US very clearly envisaged this situation, yet it allowed it to happen. But there is a price to pay for it, isn't it? Like you said, that this rule cannot be given legitimacy by any civilized nation across the world. Then the US will then have to take responsibility for whatever is the fallout of it. What kind of realignment of forces do you see, Colonel, in this part of the world? Because Russia is striking a reconciliatory note, sort of saying that we are not going to withdraw our embassy. Our embassy will very much function, and they are willing to do business with the Taliban. China, in fact, also has said today that they are very much willing to have friendly relations with Taliban. So is that good news, or is that not so good news for the rest of the world? Because you have China and Russia already saying that they're willing to give legitimacy. India, of course, has not articulated an official statement yet. Pakistan, as we all know, and as you are saying also, the Pak Army is very much allied with the Taliban forces.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And you make a very, very important point. There's going to be a geostrategic realignment in South Asia. As you point out, both the Russians and the Chinese are not withdrawing their embassies from Kabul. And it's very likely that China, at least, will recognize the Taliban very quickly. So I think China is in a position to be the big winner here. What's going to happen, in my mind, is that they're going to invite Afghanistan into China-Pakistan economic corridor. They're going to start exploiting mineral wealth from Afghanistan. And I can foresee that China will be building military bases in Baluchistan on the Arabian coast, right at the mouth of the Persian Gulf, so they can link to their military base in Djibouti at the mouth of the Red Sea and the Suez Canal, and also connect to their bases in South China. So I see China as potentially the big winner here, and we have to push back on this so India is not isolated, and we need to have a free maritime movement in the northern Indian Ocean. These are the things that we have to look towards in the future.
Yes, and of course, all of this leaves the Afghan people leaving them completely betrayed for what has happened over the years. And I'm reading from the reactions coming in social media. After 20 years, we are back in the 2000s, says a former Afghan journalist. He says, if Taliban take over, there'll be thousands of other Osama bin Ladens, thousands of Mullah Omars, and they will unite with Pakistan and go all over Central Asia. Is that an overstatement, or do you think that these are legitimate fears?
Well, to a certain extent, they're legitimate fears because Pakistan uses terrorism as part of their foreign policy. So I think Pakistan will use Afghanistan as a launching point for terrorism in coordination with China against the West or any opponents that they view as a threat to them. So if there's going to be terrorism from Afghanistan, it's going to be facilitated by Pakistan and China. So it is certainly a concern of the future.
Yes. So at the moment, what we see then is that, the rest of the Western world is more engaged now, or immediately more focused on evacuating their citizens. They want to withdraw stakes from Afghanistan. But like I said, that leaves the Afghan people to their plight, and they are plunged into a crisis with nowhere to go. For the Taliban to inspire confidence in the people of Afghanistan also is a tall order. We are not just talking about the rest of the world. So this is the kind of, a colossal mess in that sense, because over the years there has been investment of billions of dollars into Afghanistan. Are we saying that all of that has, absolutely is a waste at this point of time, and we are back to square one from where we started trying to rebuild this country and trying to weed out the extremist forces? Just the exact opposite has happened.
Yeah, well, again, you're exactly right. We're back at year zero. We've gone back to what it was before 2001. I fully expect that the Taliban will take retaliation on all those who had helped the United States and Western countries who participated in the Afghan government. And I fully expect there's going to be terrible, brutal oppression inside Afghanistan by the Taliban, especially against women. So we have gone back to the year zero in that respect.
Yes, though the Taliban, at the moment, Colonel Lawrence Sellin is also claiming that they want peaceful relations with the international community. They do not want to live in isolation, saying that we'll respect women's and minorities' rights. We respect freedom of expression within the Sharia law, and we will develop several channels of communication. This is a Taliban statement. To what extent do you think that this is a new version of the Taliban, and we cannot entirely, judge them by the previous yardstick? Do you have any sort of confidence that there might be some semblance, of civility, or of adhering to human rights, and it may not be as bad? Do you have any hope at all?
None at all at this point. We're already seeing retaliation being taken by the Taliban against those who oppose them. We're already getting information on the ground that the Taliban have refused to educate women except in religious schools. So all the things that they have done in the past, it looks very much like they're going to continue in the future, including severe punishments under the Sharia. So I have very little hope that the Taliban has changed in any way.
All right. Colonel Lawrence Sellin, thank you so much for joining us with your views on this. And of course, it's an evolving situation even now. We still don't know the contours of the new regime in Afghanistan, what kind of Taliban rule will be imposed in Afghanistan. Thank you, Colonel Lawrence Sellin, for giving us your time.